One, two, three. Hello, all of you beautiful people out there watching this video. I hope you all had a beautiful week. Here is me, Yogile, and welcome to the episode 2 of OneMindZone Inspirational Conversations, the podcast that teaches you how to reach the balance of body and mind. Today, I'm very excited to have a very special guest, Matias Correa. I met Matthias 12 years ago in Berlin, the time when he was developing his new business project and himself as a personality. And years before that, him, like many other people on this planet, was living completely different lifestyle. He lived in Miami, had a busy, stressful life, working for the corporate companies. And one day he just dropped everything and started traveling the world and finding the real self. At the moment, he lives in Mexico. He is personal life coach for successful people. He's also fitness trainer and he builds the international retreat center with his girlfriend out there. So I really can't wait to get it started. Hello, Matthias. How are you?
Hey, hey, Yoga, how's it going? Thank you for having me over here.
Thank you so much for being here. And I have always been amazed by your stories, experiences, and your personal journey. And I'm very happy that you are able to be here and to share your knowledge and your journey with other people. And let's get started straightforward to the topic that I was mentioning already before about you having completely different lifestyle in your past. And so what was the breaking
Okay.
point of you changing your life from corporate guy to free soul traveler, and how traveling changed your perspective on life?
Wow. Okay. So thank you for having me here, first of all. Yeah, I think it was a gradual process. I think I didn't even know when I decided to quit that my life would change so much. At the time, I felt like I had done everything right in my life. You know, I had worked for this company for Philip Morris. Actually, I'd worked for them for nearly already 4 years, and before that, I had graduated with my MBA from one of the Ivy League schools. So I was making a lot of money. I was traveling. I was going to some of the islands in the Caribbean, which I was managing, and everything was sort of going right. At least I felt that way at the time. I felt that okay, I'm finally have my career path. I am young. I'm making lots of money. I can do whatever I want, and this is what I wanted. But then deep inside, I started feeling at some point that it just wasn't enough. I started feeling like there was something really missing in my life, apart from the success and everything that comes with having a corporate job and all the lifestyle that comes with it. And I think at some point, I started realizing that the benefits of having a corporate life and being a successful corporate manager were less than all the sacrifices that I was making. I think that was when I started realizing that I needed to do something, though I didn't know at the time what that really was. Um, and then as the months kept on going, I kept on feeling this feeling. It got worse and worse, and I started realizing that I'm actually a really stressed out guy, that I work tons of hours, that my personal life is just really not that great, that my main priority is my work. And at some point I started saying, oh, that doesn't really make much sense. And ultimately, I'm not really all that happy. So I think that was kind of like the breaking point. And at some point, I decided to take a break because I didn't quit outright. And when I took that break, I decided to go travel for a little bit because I had a friend that worked corporate with me, and he had gone traveling during his vacation for a couple of weeks. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever. So I said, okay, I'm gonna, take a break from my corporate life. Luckily at the time, or at least I thought it was luckily at the time, my corporation gave me like a sabbatical, so I could take a couple months off. And what ended up happening is I took a couple months off, but then I decided that I wasn't going to come back because when I started traveling, everything started changing for me. That's when really like my whole life began to take a different route. And I can see that I call that like my corporate life was like my first life, or at least my first life, professional life. And then everything that came afterwards has been a transition into many different kinds of ways of looking at life. And I think the main thing with, to answer your question, how did traveling change my life? I think what it did, it made me look at life from a very different perspective. I think that's the main thing that changed because up until that point, I had bought into everything that society says about what you should do in order to be successful and to be happy, and I'd followed that. And when I realized that that didn't work, I didn't really have another point of reference. And then when I started traveling, and I started meeting people that lived in many different ways, people, local people, and also travelers that were creating very different lives for themselves. I think that just triggered a curiosity and also kind of like this feeling that maybe there's more to life than what I thought there was. And I began to question things because of that. And I think that is the main trigger that changed everything into like that began to trigger like the new perspective on life that I have.
Hmm. And which actually country for you left the biggest change? What which country in your trip from the beginning, or I don't know where was that really changed your completely understanding of everything, of yourself, of life, of living, of in a spiritual
Hmm.
way, even?
Well, I think, yeah, I think that's definitely would be India. I mean, I think my whole trip was because I've traveled a lot since then, but that was the first trip, and that was 1 year traveling, um, and I went to something like 18 or 20 something different countries, and I
Wow.
went to 4 different continents. And in that trip, I think the one place that really impacted me the most was India, and because India is just it has that mixture of it's exotic, it has a lot of temples, it has a lot of really cool places to go. It's also rough to travel in
Mm,
India, which I kind of liked because I kind of got into rough traveling. But it also has that spiritual side, which was my first real contact with something spiritual that was more tangible, because a lot of times when I was traveling, I would see people doing rituals and doing things, but I was never part of it. Or I'd see people meditating, but I never really took part. But when I went to India was the first time that I started meeting other travelers that were doing kind of trying to follow a spiritual path, and where I kind of said to myself, hey, maybe, this could be something for me as well.
mm-hmm. I always, when I always remember you, I most of the time I remember those amazing, beautiful stories about India. And you were the one person who was telling me all the time,
Right.
Yoga, you must go to India. You must, you just have to see it. And I remember meeting your
Right.
even friends who lived in there. And I just always have this feeling that I really have to go one day. And because only because of your first stories, because it sounds so exactly that what I would like, the rough, as you say, and the spiritual part.
Mm-hmm.
And but for how long you were staying in different places? Did you settle down? Did you, or you were just like traveling freeway and without actual plan and without actual knowing what you're gonna do next months, next
Mm-hmm.
years? Or was it more spontaneous way?
Well, I think that first trip was I traveled quite fast. I mean, over the years, I've traveled quite a bit more, and I've changed my way of traveling because I've also changed as a person, and what I wanted to get out of the trip, or what I want now to get out of the trip, is very different than at the time. At the
Mm,
time, it was a time of discovery for me because I was kind of like in a shell, So I always had the feeling that my corporate life kind of created like a type of cocoon,
mm-hmm.
and I was like inside, or maybe like a bubble, a type of bubble or reality that it took me a while to break through and to break out of it. And when I started traveling, it was all kind of like discovering, oh, like very simple things. Like, for example, when I traveled, I discovered I could sit on the floor anywhere. Before that, I never sat on the floor anywhere. I always sat on a chair. And just something as simple as that was such a big breakthrough for me, because I realized, hey, so I would travel someplace and I would be wanting to sit down. I was tired and I would sit on a sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
and I would sit on the sidewalk and I watch people, and I was like thinking, wow, I would have never sat on a sidewalk before because I always thought it was kind of dirty. So, and by sitting on the sidewalk, it was kind of like I was breaking like a societal rule or something. At least that's how it felt for me. Like, okay, I'm doing something that a lot of people don't do, or at least something I wouldn't have done.
Mm.
Um, so it was that kind of year. It was a year of experimenting, trying different things. So I would travel to different places kind of fast. I'll stay a couple of days, and then I'll go someplace else.
Did you
Um,
get connected with the people from there? Did you find your
yeah,
friends? Did you meet friends?
yeah. I met. Oh my God! This the great thing about traveling is that you meet the most unexpected people in the most of unexpected places. This is what I really loved about it. And because of those people and because of those places and the context of those meetings, you look at yourself and you look at life in general just totally different. Because like a lot of times, like how it is, like when you're like home, you meet your circle of friends, and your circle of friends kind of in a way reflect some of the things that you believe or some of the things you hold true.
Mm.
Well, when you go travel, you meet people in random places that believe things very different from you, but then all of a sudden they're your friends because they're traveling too, or you just met them and you connected at a very human level,
Yeah.
and they're giving you very different information. So all of a sudden you're like looking at life through a different lens. Um, so that first trip was like really discovering, trying out new things, moving around really fast because I was just curious to see what's in the other at the other place that I'm going to. So it's kind of like that. Later on, I started traveling slower because I realized there's a lot of really great benefits to traveling slow as well.
Okay. And how it happened afterwards that you decided to settle in Berlin and start a new business and completely reinventing yourself from one persona to another?
Right. Uh, I think, okay, so what traveling did is it broke all the molds of the corporate world. It really made me question the whole corporate setting and just the values that are behind that lifestyle. Um, and it also made me realize that what I want to be really happy and I want to be free. And these were like concepts that I didn't have before. So then when at some point with traveling, and this is something that I always I talk about when I talk to people that ask me about traveling, is that traveling can get old as well. It
Mm.
gets tiring after a while. Um, but traveling itself is not a solution to being happier. It can give you happiness for a while, but after a while, it's like anything else. If you do it long enough, it gets tiring. But traveling teaches you certain things. That's the thing, and that's the important thing. And so it taught me to have perspective, to step outside from my life. And so then when I was traveling after the first trip, I started feeling like, okay, it's great to travel, but I want to. At some point, I felt like I want to build something. I want to create something. Traveling for the sake of traveling is okay, but I felt a little antsy to do something. And when I went to Berlin, Berlin just blew me away when I first got there, because I had never been to a place where first of all, there were like a lot of travelers there. There were a lot of people that were really free, that had been all different parts of the world. It was very alternative. Um, a lot of people were questioning a lot of things, which is what I was doing at the same time. And it was just crazy cool. It was just such a cool place. So I went there not knowing that I was going to stay there. And once I was there, I just realized, wow, this is a really cool place. this could be a really cool base and a cool base to start something, to create something, which was the feeling that I had at the time, that I wanted to do something, though I wasn't sure what that would be.
Mm. So, and so my question is, um, how do you feel that is the person is actually endless to reinvent himself? Because for me, once I started the traveling and changing the living places, I really realized that the human possibilities are really endless. You can learn everything, you can change your life from one to another completely, and non-stop reinventing, non-stop doing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
do
Yeah,
you think
yeah,
so as well?
yeah, for sure, for sure. I think what what used to limit me a lot from changing my life when it wasn't working, which has changed now, is the fact that I thought that I had this like solid identity, like this
Mhm,
personal identity how I saw myself. And I thought that, okay, that's me, that's who I am.
mhm,
And I never realized that that identity, like the things I identify with, that those can change. And that even though, like before, like I identified myself as a corporate manager, and
exactly.
for a while, I thought, okay, I'm this young, successful corporate guy, and I'm going to work for other corporations, and I move up the corporate ladder, and I'm going to make a lot of money. And I saw myself as this ambitious young man, right? And at
Right.
some point, I when I started traveling, all that started to change, and I started dropping those identifications, and I began to look at myself as this traveler, kind of like this carefree person that can move anywhere in the world and can, adventurous, that's willing to try anything. And I was like really amazed that all of a sudden, after a year, I was looking at myself from a very different perspective. My identity had changed. And then when I went to Berlin, that began to change as well. So in a way, I feel like initially it was traveling that changed my identity, because that allowed me to see. But later on, I started realizing, like what you just said, is that we can actually change our identity without having to travel, without having to do anything. Like really
Exactly.
just by really understanding that we have endless potential as human beings. And that's when I got to that point where I understood that I can change my own identity. That's when I started feeling like I could really be anything.
Exactly. And it's never too late.
Number too late, of course.
And for me, this more like endless also possibilities. It's appears all the time when I do any of the spiritual activity with me, or either this is meditation or this is the breath work, and then seeing yourself as a changing and seeing yourself as a how you can see, how you can track your
Mm,
body, how you can listen your body, and maybe before didn't even know about these things, and now I start seeing that, oh, this is actually nothing. The human, it's just endless. It's endless possibilities,
yeah,
and
I
there's
get the same
so much
feeling
more
too.
we still don't know. You know.
Yeah, I think like like with meditation and stuff like that. Um, I think the reason why it makes you realize that you have endless possibilities is because when you do like spiritual work in the sense of like meditation, for example,
Mm,
meditation, what it does, it brings you to the present moment. And when
exactly.
you're in the present moment, you're not identifying with things. You just
Exactly.
are. You're just
Exactly.
being. And when you're in that state of being, then you realize that, hey, okay, then I can work in other fields. I can live my life in other ways. I can do a lot of different things. It is only when we like stop being and we stop being so present and we get wrapped up in our own minds and into what we think we need to be doing that we get
Mm,
trapped into like this identity thing, I think.
exactly. Because we don't have actually to focus on the dream. We have to focus on right now. And
Mm-hmm,
once we do it, then everything becomes easier.
for sure.
And once you mentioned now meditation, what was your first introduction to meditation?
Mm-hmm.
When was the first time that you tried or you got know where and what method? Tell me a bit about
Mhm.
that.
Yeah, it was actually the first time was I went to Pune, India,
Mm-hmm.
and I there's the center of from Osho. I don't know if you know
Ah,
Osho.
yes, I
So
know.
I went to the Osho Center and I stayed there for like a month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if I before that somebody maybe had taught me something of meditation, but I know that being in the ashram there was the first like big experience because there's nothing else to do there really. I mean, you go there to
Just for
learn
that,
how to
no?
just for that, right? And I would say that yeah, I mean, that was my first experience with meditation, though later on it changed quite a bit. And, I kind of had but it was a good place for me to transition into other things, I think.
Exactly. And what were the other things later on? Like
Well,
how this meditation process evolved through the years for you?
um, I think so with the Osho, so I was doing this kind of meditation that was one of the basic meditations they have is to observe your thoughts. So Osho believed that if you um, observe your thoughts, but without getting like really involved in your thoughts, you just like watch them without getting involved in the drama that's going on. Then what happens is that the thought stops. You don't that thought goes away, and then another thought comes into your mind. And then what you do is you watch that without getting involved, and then that thought goes away, and then another thought comes by, and you just keep on doing this, and at some point thoughts are coming in and out really, really fast. And what he says is if you do this, you get to a point where eventually you stop really getting involved in your thoughts,
Mm.
okay? Because you're just kind of like just watching, but you're not really involved. So that was the first kind of type of meditation I did for a while. But at some point, a lot of things changed that. I think I had a very big transition in life when my brother, my little brother, when he died, he passed away, um, and he had a very tragic death. He committed suicide, and everything around it was very tragic. And I was in Berlin, and I was just really I was destroyed. And in a way, like all the work that I'd done, the spiritual work that I'd been doing, because not only was I meditating, I was doing yoga and I was doing
Mm.
Tai Chi, I was doing a whole bunch of other stuff at the time. Um, Kind of all went out the window. And in its place, I started feeling really, really depressed. And that in itself was a huge lesson. Looking back, like now when I look back, the fact that I had thought that when I was in Osho ashram and afterwards that I had attained some kind of level of something of some kind of
Mm-hmm.
spirituality, and then just like that, it was just kind of taken away. It just like it stopped, and I realized, and I felt like, man, I forgot everything that I learned. So that was a big lesson, that life kind of goes up and down. It's not you're always learning, and no matter how good you are, things can become difficult, and then you have to figure out ways to get back. So it's kind of like a journey. It's a path that you're always kind of correcting and always getting back. But anyways, so after my brother passed away, I started the business, in the bar, Mano Cafe, underground bar with live music and stuff like that, which is where we met in Berlin. And
Exactly.
I was the first few years. I think you didn't know me then, but I was very depressed, and I was not in a good place. And I think I met you when I was getting out of that. At some point, I realized that I was just miserable. I really didn't like my business. I didn't like my life. Had broken up with my long term girlfriend. Um, I felt like there was this pain inside that just was never going to subside. That's the way I felt, and I didn't want to either. In a way, I didn't want to let go of the pain because it reminded me of my brother, and so all that, everything was spiraling out of control. And at some point, I think I was smoking a lot of grass and weed to numb out the pain. I
Mm.
was drinking a lot, which comes also with a bar business. But I just, and at some point I kind of hit rock bottom. I kind of felt like so miserable with my life. And I said to myself, okay, I need to change my life. I want to go back to the way I was before, but I didn't know how to do that. So I said, so I started kind of like asking friends, what do you think I should do? And actually, we have a common friend that gave me an incredible advice and changed my life.
Okay.
And that common friend is Fong.
Ah,
You know,
really?
yeah, Fong, who worked in the cafe, he had been doing a type of meditation, which was Vipassana meditation.
Okay. So
And
he introduced
I,
you with Vipassana. Okay.
yeah, and he told me, hey, you should really try it out. It's a really amazing technique. And, I was willing to try anything at that time. I was so
Mm.
desperate. So I decided to take some time away from my business. I left Berlin, left the business with friends that were running it, and I went to India again, and I signed up for a Vipassana meditation, a 10-day course, where you said basically Vipassana, it's 10 days, super intensive. You're 10 and a half hours a day, sitting on a cushion, just meditating. Um, Really, you're not even supposed to move very much. So it was very rigorous on the body, very rigorous on the mind. And at the end of that, I felt a significant shift in the way I
Okay.
felt in everything and the beginning of something. And then from there, I went to the Himalayas and I checked out a room on top of this hill. It's between a mountain and a hill. It was pretty high up. And there was nobody there. I was there alone in this guest
Amazing.
house. And I submitted myself to like almost 3 weeks, not 3 weeks, I mean, 3 months of self imposed rehabilitation. So what I did is I said to myself, okay, I need to get healthy. So I began to eat really healthy. I began to meditate. I was meditating a lot. I was meditating like 4 hours a day with my new technique with Vipassana. I started doing yoga, and I would just do this every single day. I'd taken some books that I wanted to read that were like spiritual nature. I was reading. I don't know if you know of Krishnamurti, so I was
Yeah.
reading him, and he's a really deep guy. So all that for 3 months, and at the end of those 3 months, it was just unbelievable. I felt so clean. I felt optimistic about my life. I felt like the big pain that I had from my brother's death somehow. Yeah, I still missed him, but I didn't feel the pain. I felt like it was okay. I could deal with it. I felt like I wanted to go back to Berlin and I wanted to create this incredible business and had all these ideas on how to create this a business completely different than all the other business that I had done before because I wanted the business to be had to support my new life, my new spiritual life, and my and not only support me but also support other people in their pursuit of happiness instead of just the pursuit of money, which most businesses are built around that. Um, so yeah, so that was the big transition for me right there.
It's beautiful because it's many times you also were telling to me about Vipassana meditation that we should really do once in my life. And it's funny, right before the whole COVID situation, right before the lockdown, I was about to sign up for to do this for 10 days outside of Barcelona. And I was so looking forward and I was ready to go to dive into this tough 10 days to take out everything from me, all my belongings, and just to spend time just for that because I felt that I really needed to to kind of do the restarting your mind, or start seeing things maybe differently. But unfortunately, all of this plan got destroyed by COVID, and now I'm waiting for another possibility when I is going to be available again to do this
Mm-hmm.
um, centers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But I really would love to. Huh?
yeah. I mean, it was for me. It changed my life completely, like drastic change. It changed like how I felt inside. This is like the really like weird thing that I thought. It wasn't just so much that I was like meditating more, but like I felt like inside of me. Well, before that, I felt like kind of anxious or I felt pain or I felt my moods would go up and down and stuff like that. I
Mm,
felt like my moods were so much more stable. I felt like there was like this like soft buzz
yeah.
inside. Like everything was buzzing, but like really soft and smooth. And I could even tell in my voice, like when I would talk, my voice sounded and came out softer and less stressed, less forced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was just remarkable.
Wow. Yeah, because that's always the hardest part to actually keep the mood, to balance the mood, because sometimes even if I do just because I do the meditation daily, and then even if I finish, I feel like relaxed and calm, but then any trigger can still completely disbalance your mood, you know. And I think this is the hardest part, is to keep this balance all the time, to keep this calm, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, for sure. But it's it's like to me, it's like it's a journey. It's a process
Exactly.
because like even when I meditate, like now, like I'll meditate. It doesn't mean that I'm always gonna have like a really good day in terms of like that I feel great every single day or spectacular, or even that my meditation is smooth. I mean, in fact, this is something that's changed in me, is that like before I used to think that like a really good meditation was when I would close my eyes and everything was in peace and I could kind of like very easily observe myself. But then I realized that what I learned was like through Vipassana, what primarily was that when I'm totally chaotic inside and things are going kind of like, and I feel anxiety, and I'm having trouble concentrating, for me, those are the most important times to meditate. And even though the whole process of meditating is not so smooth, I feel like I get more out of those times than the times when everything is great. And the, this is what I with people that that particular technique teaches you not it's not only so you can be very present, it teaches you to have tolerance for discomfort. Because a
Yeah.
lot of times what throws us off is that you feel discomfort and then all that peace that you felt before just goes out the window and now you have this other mood. So Vipassana teaches you how to tolerate that so you can stay kind of centered despite the fact that you have this discomfort or pain or something that's kind of bugging you. It also teaches you patience, and I think these things are like very basic things to have like on a spiritual path, to be tolerant, to have patience, because if you're not patient, about things, then everything's going to trigger you. And and then it's very, very hard for you to even be present. And
Exactly.
patience, just like tolerance, is something that you can train. You can train through these mental techniques. And because for me, like I'm a very rational guy. The way like I started realizing what meditation was, I stopped calling it spiritual. What I started calling it was just mental practice, mental
Exactly.
training.
Mm.
It's just like a technique. It's like going to the gym and you do these exercises to get
It's
your
a
muscles
yeah,
more fit.
yeah. It's another discipline habit, no, that you have to adapt in your life.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think for me, I like that description better because I feel like a lot of times, like the word spirituality, a lot of people are kind of like resistant to it. It sounds a
Yeah.
little maybe too hippie-ish,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
too alternative. But when I talk about, hey, it's a mental technique. It's like it's mental training.
Yeah.
Um, People relate to that pretty clear and they can understand it. And like one of the examples I always like that I use to describe this is like if you if you let your body decide what you eat. So let's say you're walking by a store and you see this chocolate and you're like, oh, I want to eat that. So you eat it. Then you go past, let's say McDonald's, and you say, oh, that looks good. I'm gonna eat that. And you eat whatever your body wants. At some point, you're gonna start feeling pretty unhealthy
Yeah.
because because in a way we have to have some kind of discipline when we eat. You just cannot let your body do whatever it wants. You have to decide, okay, consciously decide, okay, I'm not gonna eat that, even though it tastes good. I'm not gonna eat that cheeseburger because it's not going to bring good benefits to me in the long run. So it's like these decisions you make at a health level. And same thing with going to fitness. You know, you don't want to go to fitness. You're like, oh, how boring.
Yeah.
But then you make a decision and you say, hey, you know what? But it's really good for me to go to fitness and do some exercise because it's good for my mental health. It's good for my body health. It's good for everything, right? Well, the same thing with the mind. You know, like if you don't train your mind in any kind of way, then your mind develops all kinds of bad patterns. Like the same thing like with eating. It starts thinking in ways that are not healthy. It starts reacting in ways that are not healthy, right? So we also need mental training. It's a kind of awareness and a kind of discipline so we can train our minds to behave in patterns that are good for us in the long run. So that's kind of like the way I understand meditation.
Yeah, and as you say, like this, to work on the new patterns is like because our brain, human mind is divided into two parts, like the thinking mind and the feeling mind. And
Right.
of course, the feeling mind is more concentrated on the short-time satisfactions, which also leads to anxiety and stuff. And the thinking mind is more concentrated on the long-term uh, things in a or like how to say in a things to do that will gonna bring you some good thing to you in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this the meditation or mindfulness practice is actually very important to balance this both uh, sides of the human mind, because otherwise if we let the feeling mind to take over, as you say, we all the day gonna eat just burgers and stuff, not going to gym, not taking care of ourselves, being lazy, and
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, and this is very important. This is very important.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I think you're
And I think
100% correct.
they should actually teach the kids already at school all of these things, because it's all depends from the education. How do you educate people from the beginning on? Because no one tells you, unless if you're born maybe in India, there is different way, because there is a big tradition and from the ancient times. But when you're here in the Western world, if you grow up, no one is telling you about these things. No one is telling you what is yoga, what is meditation, that you have to train your concentration, focus, awareness, and then
Mm-hmm.
you're only able to find out by yourself, if you search and if you want to search. Otherwise, you don't really know all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, 100. I agree 100%. You know, it's so basic
Exactly.
that to our us being able to live in a healthy and happy way, it's so basic that we do these things that they should be fundamental teachings. You know, and
Mm,
I think it's the fact that it seems. I think it's been put in like in a corner like of spiritual search, so like that we all, and I understand that because a lot of people are not ready to do things like that because they're maybe more concerned in let's say in the physical world, or they're concerned about their profession and they're concerned about other things. And a lot of times it takes kind of like an awakening for you to say, hey, but let me really focus on inner growth.
mm,
Um, but I think maybe like you say, like if we as children understood, to instead of looking outside, that we look inside,
mm.
and shows techniques on how to look inside because what's going on inside is going to determine what comes out. Man, can you imagine what a society we built if kids were trained like that from the beginning?
The
That would be
new world
amazing.
would come out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay. I also know that you've been trying different shamanic practices. So how it happened that from the spiritual, from like meditation, vipassana, discovering yoga and stuff, you drifted to shamanic thing. And what was your experiences?
Hmm. So I think it's the same thing that it's the lesson I learned from traveling. That I just question things. I question anything that is mainstream, any pattern that I developed for a really long time. I question. And when I mean by question is I wonder like if there are other things out there. I wonder if there's another way to look at things. So even with Vipassana, I did that for almost 10 years, and I was doing these 10-day retreats um, every single year. And sometimes I would do two of those retreats a year. And then I was meditating tons and tons of hours. Sometimes I remember I got to a point where I was meditating for a while, like almost 6 hours a day.
Oh my God,
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it was a lot. But I was just thinking, well, okay, but maybe there are other ways to achieve personal growth, to find ways to connect at a deeper level with myself. So that was part of it. The other part of it was, I there was always a feeling that life could be better. Like I could do things better, that I could be uh, more at peace with myself. Uh, that that even though I was doing this meditation, that there were still times where I still felt a little down, or I felt like okay, I need to change something. So I think that feeling that okay, there's still so much more to go was like the the catalyst for looking at other things. And at the same time, because I was traveling, I had been traveling in Asia quite a bit. At some point, I said, okay, what would be really cool to approach spirituality and personal growth from a totally different perspective. And I just realized that in Latin America, there was shamanism was really big. And I remember like sometime in 2000, it was 2007, I was traveling in Colombia.
Hmm.
And there I was traveling in this small town called San Agustin. Uh, and there I met a shaman. I met a man I was just walking in the plaza, and I was talking to somebody, and then I met this man, and he was just a very, very simple man, very poor. And we just sat down, like typical travel story, just sit down on the side of a sidewalk and just start talking to some random person. And then he told me that he did ayahuasca ceremonies, and he offered me if I would be willing to, if I wanted to, I could go to his house and do it. And it was almost like nothing. It was like giving it for free. And I had heard about ayahuasca at the time, but I never tried it. And
Hmm.
I heard that it was supposed to be like these crazy uh, hallucinations, and you can see things about yourself, and you see spiders and snakes and all these weird things. And I was like, wow, that's cool. I want to try that. So uh, so I said, okay, let's try it without really knowing what I was getting into. And wow, man, that first experience blew me away in so many ways. I mean, it was incredibly hard and dark. Some of the things I saw when I took the ayahuasca were wow, things of nightmares. And
Hmm.
at the same time, it was beautiful and magical and revealing. It was so many different things. And at the end of that experience, I felt that I had lived something. I felt like I had seen something within myself, like a truth about myself that wasn't necessarily everything great. There were some things about myself that I saw very clearly that I wanted to change. But I think the most impactful thing was that I had the feeling that now that I've seen this, I cannot pretend like I didn't see it.
Okay.
Now I need to do something about it. Like a lot of times we recognize things about ourselves, but we kind of like push it aside, and we're like, all right, whatever.
Ignoring, yeah.
But I couldn't ignore it. So that was really amazing, and that experience triggered like a couple years later, like 3 years later, was my first real shamanic trip, which was a trip dedicated to learning different types of shamanic practices. But that trip was the one that experience was the one that triggered it.
Wow. And for how many years? Because I know you also lived for a while in a shamanic community, no?
Yeah. Yes. Correct.
So
Yeah.
how many years you actually, for how long you were experiencing all this? And if you and are you still participating in some ceremonies?
Well, Mara, my partner, she's very involved, and yeah, we do certain things here. at the house here where we live. But different than back then. I mean, I've discovered it's been a learning process. It was like kind of like traveling. At the beginning, I was so excited about it, and I just wanted to try everything. But then after a while, I kind of started finding my way. Like what made sense for me, because I realized also is that there's so many spiritual practices out there and so many ways to achieve personal growth, and not all of them were tailor made for me. There's
Okay.
some that make more sense than others. So and that's part of the journey. At least for me, has been to kind of discover, to try things out and discover what works, what really resonates, what's making a real big impact or a lasting impact, and keeping that, and then things that don't, well, then moving on from that. So yeah, so I did that. Let me see, 2010, I went on a journey. I spent 6 months traveling in South America, and I was trying all kinds of things. I did diets in Peru, where they call dieta, where you go into. At the time, I went into the Amazons, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks, and staying in a bungalow in the middle of the Amazons, and you eat these plants that the shaman gives you, and they're not ayahuasca, these other plants that they give you
Mm-hmm.
that also make you feel kind of sick, but
Mm-hmm.
they open up other things for you, other positive things. And you have a special diet which is very limited, and every other day you take ayahuasca. So I did some of those dietas. And then I traveled to other places where I was doing a lot of ayahuasca, because that's what you do in Peru, where I met other people. And then in Ecuador, I started trying some other plants as well, and I got involved with a group called Camino Rojo. Um, and there with the Camino Rojo, it was very much like a family. And then they had a very structured um, way of approaching spirituality, with a lot of rituals, and with a lot of different plants that are also hallucinogenic and stuff like that. And some of them were not. So I got involved with that as well, in that trip. And then the next year, I did the same trip. Like I went back to Latin America, and I went with Mara this time, and then we tried a whole bunch of different things, and then it changed her completely as well. The whole shamanic path just completely changed her, probably more than me. Um, and then we did that, and then she went to live there, and then I moved there to Latin America to live in Colombia, in the south of Colombia, and we lived in a place where there was a world-renowned shaman there, and this world-renowned shaman was bringing shamans from all over the world, like top shamans from
Oh.
North America, like Lakota shamans, and people from Mexico, also from Nepal, and from all different places. And these were like really elderly people that were coming there, that
Mm-hmm.
dedicated their lives to that. That was like the way of being. And so we learned from them, though my time was more limited than Mara. Mara really stayed there for a really long time, and she learned a lot, and then shared some of that with me.
What do you think about this new trend, like that ayahuasca ceremony is popping up everywhere, and it's like so many people are
Mm.
doing it, so many people are offering it. What do you think about this? Can you recommend to do it with no matter who, or you would really say that it's better to go to the roots, to the South America?
Mm. That's a good question. I think, well, you know how like let's say 100 years ago, if you wanted to find a good shaman, let's say you were in Spain, and you
Mm,
wanted to find a really good shaman, or 200 years ago or 300 years ago, I don't know.
mm,
Maybe you would get on a boat, you would have crossed the entire ocean, you would arrive to, let's say, Brazil, and then you would have gone through this huge expedition to the Amazon, and probably asked a million different people, so you can finally go meet that one shaman in the middle of nowhere that can help you. So it was incredibly hard to find a shaman, a really good shaman.
mm.
I feel that right now it's equally as hard. And it's equally as hard because now everybody is a shaman, and so now you have to navigate through a sea of people where everybody is offering ayahuasca. Everybody sort of knows a little bit the traditions or has had some kind of experience with these traditions. But meeting the one like really true shaman, the shamans are the shaman of like the native shamans and the shamans of like the old ways. They were, first of all, old.
Mm,
They're old people. There were no young shamans, because in order to be a shaman, it wasn't just that you were like serving ayahuasca or that you knew the rituals. The shaman was a wise man or a wise woman. It was a person that had lived an entire life, and because all the wisdom that they had gained through their entire life, and all the wisdom also of dealing with these powerful plants and these powerful healing techniques of nature that had been passed down very slowly, because a lot of stuff is not just stuff that you can just pass down through a recipe book.
mm,
Um, and then only at the end of their lives would they be considered shamans, because these people were to heal you, they're going to help you, but they require all their life experience to help you. So nowadays, what do you have? You have people that are 20 something year olds, like a 22-year-old person that went on a trip and spent 2 years in the Amazons in Peru. And then they come out of that and they've learned something, of course, and they had a huge transformation and they want to share that, which is normal. But, they end up calling themselves shaman. And I feel like that there's, I feel like it can be a little dangerous, to
mm,
do that, because you don't have the life experience to in order to really help people and to deal with the difficulties. Because here's the thing, that when you're taking these things, it could go great. You can go to any shaman or any person and take, let's say, ayahuasca or peyote or any of the other, what they call master plants. And you can have an incredible life opening experience. But similarly, you can go to one of these places and you can have a horrible, traumatic experience. And if you don't have somebody there to guide you, it could take you the other way. Instead of opening up something for you, it can really create a lifelong trauma, which a lot of people have happened that, they're incredibly traumatized by their shamanic experiences.
yeah, I think this is the only reason why I still didn't take ayahuasca, because I'm a bit scared or not sure where I would do it, if so, in Europe.
Hmm.
And yes, maybe since you say that you are building the retreat center, so maybe the next time we'll be at your retreat center.
Yeah,
If
we're
you
gonna have,
bring some big shaman there.
yeah, we're gonna have to bring somebody really good.
Um,
Yeah.
so tell me a bit about the center you're building there with your girlfriend Mara. What is the idea and how did you come up with this idea and what is going to be the concept of it?
Right. Um, so the idea was that we both felt like, okay, we've learned a lot of things. So partly is to share that, but more was to create a space where we can offer something that's of value to society in some kind of way, to offer something back. It was never started. Let me put it this way: it had never ever started from a business perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because even up to this day, I really don't know if that is a good business model or not, and I really don't care. What I care about is the fact that if you have a space like this, so you can offer something incredible for people that can meet like a life transformation opportunity for life transformation, like it happened for me. And at the same time, it's a great opportunity for us to continue to learn as well, for me and Mara, which is really the part that kind of made it like, yeah, let's do this, is because we say, hey, we want to be in contact with these amazing people. We want to learn new things. A better way to do it than to host people like that. So that was like the whole motivation behind it. Um, Either way, we're always like we're always connected to this kind of world. So we thought, okay, it makes sense that we move in that direction.
And when you are you planning to finish the whole construction works, and when do you were you planning to start having some events or
Mm.
what are your plans? If you can tell
Well,
them to us.
yeah. Well, I mean, with the coronavirus, everything changed. This is the virus. We were really ready to go ahead right before the virus hit. And once it hit, it put everything kind of like into a big question mark because we were like thinking, okay, people are not traveling, people are not even, everybody's maintaining social distancing, and with all the restrictions, do people even want to go on a retreat? Maybe people are going to be like, hey, the last thing I want to do is be in a room uh, surrounded by other people, meditating or doing anything. So we were kind of uncertain about that, but so we put things on hold. But I have this feeling that now more than ever, we need things like that. You know, we need spaces to heal and to connect. Because this is one of the things that for me has been like with everything that's happened. Um, my I guess I one of the concerns that I have is that the new normal, everything that's the new normal with all these restrictions becomes a permanent new normal in the sense that we become used to being like not touching people or having distance from people. We become used to being protecting ourselves and being scared of everything that's happened. Because if that happens, what ends up happening, I think, is that we stop living in a natural way.
Yeah.
So for example, like the other day we did a fire here. We have a place, like a ceremonial place where we do fires at night sometimes. And we had a fire and we had some friends over. And while we were having this fire, I was telling Tamara, it's amazing, this people, human beings have been getting together around the fire to connect with each other or to pray or to do whatever since the beginning of our species. This has been the normal, something so normal for human beings on how to connect, to get together. And things like that, they're now with everything that's happening, are not going to be possible anymore. So I feel like there's going to be a lot of people that maybe don't want to go to a retreat center, but I feel like for the people that do, I think it's going to be very important to have a place where you can go and connect and connect at a natural level with other human beings, and to let go of these fears and to let go of all the social trauma that's being caused by all the things that happened. Because it's been very tragic, all the things that have happened and all the deaths and everything. But that's created like a big social scar, I feel, and I think we're gonna need to heal that somehow. So now we're moving back toward this idea. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, we want to offer this to people, and I think in the future, open ourselves up more to creating spaces for these shamans to come and help people that are dealing with that or with other issues as well.
Yeah, but I'm also quite positive about the future and the traveling, because I think this is why every country is now challenging themselves in finding faster the vaccines. And I think once there are vaccines, of course, the people will want to travel. I guess this would help us somehow, no, to move around.
Mm-hmm.
So I still don't know if
Yeah.
this is a good thing, but still somehow I think it should get back to normal sooner or later, or the new normal, as you say.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's whatever is happening right now. I mean, it's important that maybe we follow all the rules, all the restrictions, and all that. But for me, it's like very clear that this has to be like a transition or like a temporary thing, like emergency type of behavior. Like, okay, there's this pandemic. Okay, we have to take care of ourselves. We got to wear face masks. We got to keep social distance. Okay, makes sense. But that cannot be like the way that we are on the long term. There has to be like a time where we phase out of that and we like get over it and we overcome that, and then we begin to connect again. Um, I think that's for me like the key with all this is because I think at a spiritual level, we need to connect with other people. We cannot live in bubbles. We cannot live separate. Our spirituality is one thing like the shamanic spirituality taught me, and it's very interesting. What I started thinking a long time ago, how is shamanism similar to meditation, right? And what I realized is that they both take very separate, very actually opposite paths, but they all end up in the exact same place. And that is that, like with meditation, a lot of times meditation, like especially like all the Buddhist meditation, what they try to teach you is to let go of the ego, right? So if you're able to overcome your ego or let go of your ego, what you come to realization, like people that are enlightened, supposedly what they come to realization is that there is no I, there is no self, there is no identity, and that there's only everything's connected. It's not just there's no me, there's everything, a connection of everything, and like a oneness. And then with shamanism, what's really interesting about shamanism starts from that point. Like if you go to a shamanic ceremony, they'll pray to the eagle that's flying by, and they'll call it grandfather eagle, and grandfather eagle is flying by right at the moment that you're doing a ceremony, and that means something. And the reason it means something is because the people that do shamanism recognize that everything's connected from the beginning. They say everything's connected. Like there's an eagle flying by here, the river is flowing at this moment, and I just did this, and that is all connected somehow. That all means something. And that's why the people that do shamanism, all the different things in nature are kind of alive, and they're all, and in fact, a lot of traditions they call like the animals, they call them their grandfathers or their ancestors, or even things that are not alive, like rocks. They say rocks are alive and rocks are ancestor because they feel like there's a connection between us and all that. So everything's leading, whether you're from meditation or from shamanism, everything's leading to the point where everything is connected. Everything is, we're all right. So, and I feel like, this thing with, like we're talking, going back to the coronavirus and everything that's happened, is that all this push toward kind of staying separate and, not getting too close to each other. At some point, we need to get back to the that we're all connected and that we need everything to be connected.
Exactly. It's very well said. Well, it's been a lot of information, I think, for everyone. And we actually did already more than 1 hour. It's beautiful.
Really?
Um,
Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's like, wow. For closing, what would you say to people for those who is maybe confused and lost with their life, with their profession, with their work, and being maybe trapped in this circle of the stress and the running and the anxiety, maybe depression, and uh, they don't know what to grab with, they don't know where to start or what to change, or maybe I don't know, like what could be your advice or your hint, or just for them to realize?
Well, well, I think the first thing is to. I think it's. I think it's really important to recognize if you're like that, if you're feeling really lost, or you're feeling kind of like your life is not making sense anymore, or your career is not making sense. To understand that you're actually not in a bad place. It's actually almost like a prerequisite somehow in order to take a leap forward into something bigger and something better, in order to evolve. Because a lot of times, if everything, let's say you have a career and everything seems to be going great, you're not going to question things. You're not going to try something different. Even though at a subconscious level, maybe there are a lot of things that are going wrong, but at a conscious level, you're not really aware. So you're kind of just maybe just going along with whatever's happening. But whenever you get in a point where you're kind of like down, you're depressed, you're kind of lost, that can be an opportunity if you decide to look at it that way. An opportunity for change and for exploring So that's the first part, is to maybe start, not to get desperate, to recognize that whenever you're going through a major transition, there's a feeling of being lost, because a lot of times, what felt normal was maybe the old pattern of behavior or how you're living before. And then as you let go of that, there's kind of like chaos. And then until you move into something that's more solid and maybe even better, there's a moment of uncomfortableness. So, you don't, doesn't feel all that good. Um, so I say that's very important, is to be tolerant, or to be able to accept that there is going to be discomfort and change. And then I would say, the other thing is to begin to question things. I think this is essential, to question your reality, to question, like, let's say if you're miserable with your career, question it. Like for example, one of the questions I asked myself when I was a corporate guy and I was really stressed out, I was like, does it really make sense that I'm to work 60, 70 hours a week?
Mm.
I'm like, where is that written that that's going to make me happy, independent of the fact that that's what I need to do to make more money? I mean, does that make sense? And when I began to think about that, I was like, well, maybe that doesn't make sense. What would happen if I was working less hours? What would happen if I had, instead of 2 weeks vacation, if I could take off 2 months to really be with myself? What would my life look like? What could happen if that was the case? So that's what I mean by questioning, is to kind of like take things that you already have in your life, or things that you already believe in, and put it up to scrutiny. Just ask yourself, try to look at it from a different perspective and say, what would happen if I did things differently? Because when you do that, that opens doors to new possibilities. And a lot of times when you feel lost because you don't see the doors, you don't see the opportunities that are out there for you, because you're kind of stuck in the same patterns and the same beliefs all the time. Um, so I would say that, to begin questioning and to begin experimenting, to begin trying, this whole thing with spirituality or personal growth, it's a journey, and it's a journey of trying out new things, putting yourself out there. A lot of times you discover things that are amazing. A lot of times you discover things that are absolutely a waste of time. But just the process of putting yourself out there and trying to figure out ways that make you happy, that are outside of, let's say, the typical things that we're being told, which is like, for example, the career path, just to find like the perfect career to make you happy. When you look at things outside of that, that in itself is going to open up new opportunities. So I think that's what I would say, people, and to know that it's a journey, and to enjoy the journey as much as you can, even with its hardships and its tribulations.
Yeah, and when is the best time? Then actually now, because now is the perfect time when the whole world is on the kind of frozen moment when everyone is on lockdown and you have so much time to spend with yourself. So now is also the best time to experiment, to question yourself, to try different things.
Yeah, for sure. With all this
Because
time that we've been given, yeah, it's a blessing. It can be a
yeah,
blessing if you use it wisely.
Yeah, because many people are like also now around, which is also in a maybe depressed or nervous. And I always try to say, no, but see the good part of it. You have now way more time. You don't have to go every day to the office and this you spend at home. You just can wake up in the morning earlier and try things. Maybe you change your diet. Maybe you also do some breathing exercises. Start implementing things in your life. Start seeing the difference, start seeing how it's changing you with everything, the behavior, the emotions, the
Hmm.
everything. So we have the best possibility right now, because
Hmm.
I mean the virus is still dancing around and it's going to be here for a while, and once it's over, we hopefully think hope is over at some point. We will need a lot of energy, power, and strength to come back, and to do new things, to build new things.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matias. This
Thank you
was
for having me
su-
here.
this was such a pleasure to have you here, and I am sure I'm still gonna have you once more in the future later on again to speak about other things. But for now, I'm really thankful to you for being here, and please stay safe. Please be good, and yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
thank you.
pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me over. It's always amazing to connect with you, and yeah, I love our friendship. I love the fact that we connect at a very deep level since always. It's always been like that.
Mm,
So, and to be able to do this with you, it's a pleasure. So, yeah, anytime you want to have me, I'd be happy to be part of it.
cool. Thank you so much.
Hey, have a good one, huh? Thank you for having
See
me.
you next
Take
time.
care.
Thank
See
you.
you. Take care. Bye.